Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good day to you. That's depending where you are in the world. We're doing the nighttime devotion from the devotional Maranatha. The title today, Labor Unions and Trusts. James 5, verse 7. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and have long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. The trade unions will be one of the agencies that will bring upon this earth a time of trouble such as has not been since the world began. In all our great cities, there will be a binding up in bundles by the confederacies and the unions formed. Men will rule other men and demand much of them. The lives of those who refuse to unite with the unions will be in peril. The work of the people of God is to prepare for the events of the future, which will soon come upon them with blinding force. In the world, gigantic monopolies will be formed. Men will bind themselves together in unions that will wrap them in the folds of the enemy. A few men will combine to grasp all the means to be obtained in certain lines of business. Trade unions will be formed, and those who refuse to join these unions will be marked men. These unions are one of the signs of the last days. Men are binding up in bundles ready to be burned. They may be church members, but while they belong to these unions, they cannot possibly keep the commandments of God. For to belong to these unions means to disregard the entire Decalogue. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind, and thy neighbor as thyself. How can men obey these words, form combinations that rob the poorer classes of the advantages which justly belong to them, preventing them from buying or selling, except under certain conditions? Those who claim to be the children of God are in no case to bind up with the labor unions that are formed or that shall be formed. This the Lord forbids. Cannot those who study the prophecies see and understand what is before us? Important issues must soon be met, and we wish to be hid in the cleft of the rock that we may see Jesus and be quickened by his Spirit. We have no time to lose, not a moment. The title again, Labor Unions and Trusts. I remember when I was growing up, this is probably in the 70s, 1970s, when I was very, very young. And I remember there were all the factories around this country, in the UK, right, in England, all the factories and manufacturing plants, and everything was going on, coal, whatever they were mining, and it was all going for the factories being bagged, and we all used to use coal fires and all that kind of thing. And I remember there's a whole big hoo-ha going on at some point with the unions going on strike. And that was for the coal mining and all that kind of stuff going on. And then I remember I think it was with, I think this was the time of Maggie Thatcher. This is probably going into the 80s. They closed down all the factories and all the manufacturing. And eventually, Britain wasn't manufacturing anything, not any fuels like coal or anything like that, and even cars and all that kind of stuff. Everything was closed down between the 70s and the 80s. Britain stopped manufacturing and started importing everything. Now, I don't know why I've mentioned that, but I know that that was all to do with the unions and stuff. Because I remember there was a guy called Arthur Scargill who was the leader of the Labour Party, I do believe. I may be wrong. He might have been. Or he was just leader of the union, something like that. And I just remember all of it kicking off and he was pretty much in charge. And all the manufacturing stopped in the UK. And everything became imported. And that's how they put all the taxes on everything. So it worked out cheaper for them. In the world, gigantic monopolies will be formed. The likes of Tesco, Sainsbury, Walmart. If you look at Aldi, Lidl, all the small groceries and greengrocers are being closed down because everyone's going to Sainsbury, Tesco, and it's not the big stores; it's the little stores that are in the high streets. Tesco Express, Sainsbury's local. They're putting all of us out of business. All the big companies are swallowing up and monopolizing all the business worldwide. Walmart, Asda, those big chains are getting bigger. I don't even think, what's it called? Westfield. It's not Westfield anymore. It's just, that's now just a name. That's been bought out and bought out again over the last 20 or 30 years. Getting back to these unions, where it says here, the Lord forbids us to join these unions. This is all to do with Freemasonry as well. And I normally don't like to mention this kind of stuff because it's all conspiracy stuff, but it's so true. Even in the church I attend, it has its leaders, and most of those leaders are Freemasons. And I know there's Freemasonry in most of our churches. So I've been to a few churches where I know there are Freemasons, they're absolutely certain. We cannot rely on man. We cannot rely on the church. We can only rely on Jesus. He is the only true, honest, pure person we can look to. No one else. Sad but true.